Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're here. So usually when we think about building a successful career, we picture this like staircase.
Right, a very clear progression.
Exactly. You put in the work, you climb one step up,
Yeah.
you get the promotion, you land that big client, maybe you publish a book and your foot is just planted. It feels totally structural, like solid wood and nails.
Hmm.
You just assume you're on that higher level permanently.
Well, because in most industries, that progression really is baked into the infrastructure.
Mm.
A mid-level manager doesn't suddenly wake up as an entry-level intern just because, their boss got bored.
Yeah.
There's an actual floor beneath them.
Yeah, but when you step into the reality of a long creative career, especially as you get older, you start to realize that staircase is, it's often made of smoke.
It really is.
You step up, the spotlight hits you, people are clapping, the reviews are glowing, but the stairs behind you and beneath you, they just vanish.
It is the absolute definition of a structural illusion. And as a culture, we constantly confuse a moment of bright, intense illumination with, like, a permanent foundation.
Mm.
And that confusion creates a really profound, often painful emotional landscape for anyone who has been creating for years or even decades.
Which is exactly our mission for today. We are looking at a reality that is almost entirely ignored in our culture. What is it actually like to grow older in a world that is just relentlessly obsessed with the new?
Right.
Like, what happens when you started with so much hope, you experienced that early success, and now the culture's attention has just shifted to the next shiny thing, but your most honest, exact work is still ahead of you?
To really understand that shift, you kind of have to look at the starting line. When an artist or a creator is young, the future appears completely open. There is this inherent belief that there is still time for literally everything.
Time to discover a voice, build a body of work.
Exactly, and find your place in the world. Every single exhibition or application or even just a conversation, it feels like it could be the start of something massive.
And I think it's important to say that this early hope, it isn't naive. It's actually a completely necessary engine. If you are, sitting in a studio apartment, paying for your own paint, or writing a novel at 5 a.m. before your real shift starts, you need that optimism to begin.
You absolutely do.
Because there's no concrete evidence yet that a career is even possible. Okay, let's unpack this. It's like catching a massive wave on your first time surfing and assuming the ocean will just keep pushing you forward forever, completely forgetting that waves eventually crest and roll out.
That is a perfect analogy.
Mm.
And what's fascinating here is how the system evaluates youth. Younger artists are evaluated entirely through possibility and promise. People look at their early work and talk about what might happen next.
Right, the uncertainty is generous.
Totally generous. But that masks the difference between a successful moment and a secure, structurally supported career. The young creator gets the debut exhibition, the glowing press, some quick sales, and it feels like confirmation that they've finally arrived.
It feels like the hard part is over. Like getting noticed was the hurdle, and now you're just on a permanent upward trajectory.
And that early success is real. It is a genuine achievement. The fatal mistake isn't that this early success is false, but that it's just so easy to mistake temporary attention for permanent support.
Yeah.
We have to make a very clear distinction between visibility and infrastructure.
Yes, being celebrated feels like a career, but it's not a paycheck. It's not a pension.
Far from it. A highly visible award does not automatically lead to long-term representation or institutional commitment. But the artist assumes visibility will just naturally accumulate.
Which brings us to the shift. If the young are judged so generously on their potential, what happens when that timeline basically expires? What happens when the world expects that potential to have materialized into something permanent, but, the infrastructure just wasn't there?
The creator faces a jarring reality. Because the system, the art world, publishing, whatever industry it is, doesn't move in straight lines. Priorities change.
People move around.
Right. The curator who championed your early work moves to a different museum. The gallery that launched you closes because rent went up. Funding structures are rewritten overnight. And the culture itself is organized almost entirely around the thrill of discovery.
Wait, so an artist can actually get objectively better at their craft, but be rewarded less, simply because they aren't a surprise anymore. It feels like being punished for sticking around.
It really does. And it forces us to look at the difference between deep careers and visible careers. You could have a visible career that isn't deep at all, and a very deep, mature career that is practically invisible to the mainstream.
Because you aren't the new discovery.
Exactly. When you are 25, the evaluation is all about possibility. When you're 45, the evaluation shifts to hard evidence. The generosity is just gone. Now they want to know where the sales are, which institutions have committed to you.
And God forbid life happens in the meantime, right? Like if you had to take a survival job to pay for medical bills, or you took time off to care for an aging parent, or you had kids, suddenly these very normal life events demand justification.
It's absurd. Artistic lives do not unfold on clean, corporate timetables. Gaps in a resume are often just the reality of survival.
Hmm.
But the older artist is penalized for becoming familiar. Familiarity is just not rewarded in a system that runs on novelty.
That disconnect between your internal growth, getting better at your work, and the external silence, I mean, that creates a complete psychological minefield, especially for those who remember exactly what the spotlight felt like.
Right, losing early attention carries a very unique kind of pain. When you know what it feels like for people to instantly return your calls and treat you as, a vital piece of the future, the receding of that attention can feel like a verdict.
It feels like you failed, even though you didn't.
You didn't fail at all. But artists begin measuring themselves against a younger version of themselves. And it's not because the old work was actually better. They probably look at their early stuff and cringe a bit, but because the response from the world was so much louder back then.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You are simultaneously remembered for a moment you had a decade ago and completely overlooked for the actual work you're doing right now.
That is the bizarre double bind of the art world's memory. People remember a past award or a big exhibition you had, and they just assume you have continuous income and representation. They are completely blind to how quickly that infrastructure vanishes.
So you run into someone at a party and they're like, "Oh, it's so great to see you. Things must be going so well." And you're standing there thinking, I haven't had a solo show in 6 years and I'm paying for my own studio space out of pocket."
Yes. And meanwhile, the cycle of novelty just keeps churning out new names. An artist can become completely invisible without ever being formally rejected. There is no letter saying, "We've moved on." The phone simply rings less.
And it leaves you stuck in this sort of limbo.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, society really lacks a narrative for the long middle. There is no simple story for decades of work without institutional protection. We love the romantic myth of the struggling young artist, and we love the legendary elder statesman whose legacy is secured.
But the middle is just expected to quietly pay the bills and keep producing.
Exactly. Experience is present, the work is strong, but the culture only rewards the appearance of the future.
Which means navigating this long middle without the shield of being the new kid on the block forces a pretty profound shift. It's painful, but it changes how an artist perceives their own time and their own work.
It really does. It shifts the deep dive away from discovery and into the power of duration. Because as you age, the fantasy that time is infinite just falls away.
Yeah, I mean, your energy changes, your body changes, the financial realities change. Eating ramen when you're 22 is a fun story. Eating it when you're 52 because you can't afford groceries is terrifying.
Right. And while that realization is painful, it strips away the fantasy of a permanent arrival. The idea that one final exhibition or one more award will secure everything forever, that illusion is just gone.
You realize nobody is coming to hand you a golden ticket.
And that clarity is actually a gift. It
Right.
returns the artist completely to the work. When you stop trying to impress a fickle system, you become far less impressed by mere access. You become much more attentive to what that access actually demands of you.
Because you've been behind the curtain, you know that getting a seat at the table sometimes means compromising your vision.
Absolutely. So the work made after the attention fades isn't lesser. It might be slower or stranger or less easily categorized by a marketing team, but it's infinitely more honest. The artist stops repeating the version of themselves that others first recognized.
They stop playing the early hits.
Yes. The work now possesses duration. And duration isn't just endurance. It isn't just stubbornly refusing to quit. It's accumulation. It's the ability to recognize patterns. You know the difference between genuine support and just being consumed for someone else's social capital.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you're an artist, a writer, or just building a career, it's about shedding the armor of seeking approval. You stop trying to fit someone else's lock and just start building your own door.
I couldn't agree more. Being forgotten by a system that prioritizes novelty is not the same as having nothing left to say. Living outside a clean, upward trajectory means you just have to accept several beginnings and several disappearances.
It's about letting go of that innocence without giving in to bitterness.
Exactly. You realize the system's memory might be short, but your practice is deep.
So, just to recap the journey we've been on today, we started with the intoxicating, unlimited horizon of youth and early success, right? And then we walked through that really painful, silent shift when the culture's attention moves on.
The shift from being a discovery to being familiar.
Yeah, and finally landing in that grounded, deliberate clarity of the long middle and the true power of duration. Growing older as a creator means the future might not feel unlimited anymore, but it becomes fiercely deliberate. You are no longer waiting to become someone. You are deciding what, with the time that remains, still needs to be made.
It's the ultimate shift from seeking validation to taking ownership of your voice.
It really is. So, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. Think about how our entire culture is structured to really only reward the electricity of discovery, just constantly chasing the new. If that's true, what massive, world-changing masterpieces are we actively ignoring right now simply because they are being quietly built in the shadows of a fading spotlight? Keep building your doors. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.